You ever come home and find your entire world being sucked dry by a bunch of strangers with hoses and clipboards, like you walked into some kind of bad dream and just can't wake up? That's exactly what happened to me the day the HOA decided to drain my wife's memorial. Our lake, our legacy, because of a flood risk that existed only in the mind of a woman who'd never gotten mud on her shoes. I remember standing there, pumps roaring, water disappearing, and the new HOA president, Meline, grinning like she'd just won the lottery, absolutely sure she was doing the right thing. What she didn't know, what nobody realized, was that the thing she was draining wasn't just some pretty pond, but the very secret that's kept this whole county running for decades, a backup water supply I built with my own hands. Yeah, you're not ready for this kind of payback. Trust me. Let me back up a sec, so you get the full picture. Meline CR had been HOA president for barely 3 months, but she strutted up to my door like she'd been crowned queen. Clipboard in hand, that brittle corporate smile glued to her face, she handed me a nuisance abatement order like it was a death sentence. 14 days, it read. 14 days to drain the unregistered body of water in my backyard. I almost laughed. Body of water? Lady, that's a spring-fed, engineered reservoir my wife Eleanor and I designed and built it 30 years ago. Permitted, inspected, built to outlast a 1,000-year flood, and sitting right on my own land. She didn't want to hear it. Claimed an expert assessment had determined the risk. I asked to see it. She produced a sheet of paper with no letterhead, no stamp, not even a signature. I could tell it was some knockoff template from the internet. I pointed that out, calmly, and her smile just tightened. The board's decision is final, she said, as if that settled anything. You know what I mean? I tried reasoning, tried explaining my background. 40 years as a water systems engineer, half the pipes in this community designed by yours truly. Didn't matter. 14 days, or we take action, she said, and marched down my driveway, probably thinking she'd just put me in my place. But here's the thing, she hadn't. Not even close. That lake was the last piece of Eleanor I had left, the place where we scattered her ashes and watched the wild dogwoods bloom every spring, the spot she'd picked for her bench, her view, her peace. First thing I did was call Frank, my old friend at the county, just to confirm what I already knew. Tom, they can't touch you, he laughed. That reservoir predates the HOA. You've got permits, watershed rights. Just send them a certified letter with all your paperwork. They'll back down. And for a minute, I believed him. I spent the next couple days gathering every bit of documentation I could find. Permits, soil surveys, maintenance logs, everything, right down to the photos of annual inspections. Drove down to the county office myself to get a certified copy of the original plat. Even stopped for coffee on the way home, daydreaming about the look on Meline's face when my lawyers served her that cease and desist. But when I turned onto my street, that fantasy crashed headlong into reality. There was a truck on my lawn, unmarked, big, ugly, and 2 black hoses snaked straight to my lake. By the time I got out of the car, Meline was already by the water, clipboard in hand, with some young guy in a polo shirt watching as my lake dropped by 4 feet. The stone shoreline Eleanor picked out was nothing but mud. The trout flopped in the shallows, and the ducks circled in panic. Meline didn't look ashamed. She looked victorious. You were non-compliant, Tom, she said, faking sympathy. We had to take action. All my paperwork, all my evidence, suddenly felt like dead weight. The next day, the local news showed up. Young reporter, nervous, called it a pond dispute. They cut to Meline, who spun the whole thing as a selfless act of community protection. She painted me as a stubborn old man endangering the neighborhood for nostalgia's sake. The board had acted on urgent expert advice, she said, her face the picture of professional concern. I tried calling the county again, got nowhere. Frank called back later, sounding defeated. Tom, they're stonewalling. Nobody wants bad press fighting an HOA. You're on your own. Shock wore off quick. Anger replaced it, the kind of anger that simmers and focuses you. That afternoon, Sarah, my neighbor for 40 years, retired teacher, tough as nails, came over with sandwiches and her iPad. What are you going to do? She asked. I showed her the phony assessment. We start here, I said. We turned my kitchen into a war room. Sarah digging through public records, me cross-referencing every name. The landscaping company on the assessment was brand new. Address was a P.O. box, but the paperwork had a familiar name. Derek CR. Sarah just shook her head, same as Meline. Let me guess, nephew. Sure enough, we found a Facebook post. Proud of my brilliant nephew Derek for launching his new business. Not a crime, but sleazy as hell. We needed more. Sarah called Carol, a friend on the HOA finance committee who'd been frozen out by Meline. An hour later, a plain envelope showed up in my mailbox. Inside, HOA bank statements and a contract for the Lakeside Green Initiative. $120,000, paid in full to Eco Conversion Solutions, Derek's company. Only one signature, Meline's. No board vote. No transparency. Suddenly, this wasn't about safety. It was a six-figure scam hiding behind community buzzwords. That's when it all clicked. I wasn't just fighting for Eleanor's memory. I was fighting against outright theft. But lawsuits would take years. The only thing that mattered was leverage. I grabbed a heavy-duty T-wrench and walked to the far edge of my property. Hidden under brush, right where the woods start, was a cast-iron well cover. Underneath, a 2-foot steel valve with the county seal. That, right there, is what the whole county depends on when disaster hits. 30 years ago, I'd built the emergency backup system myself, gravity-fed, off the grid, activated by that very valve. It was never on public maps, for security reasons, just a handshake deal with Frank and the county. For 20 years, nobody needed it. Now, drained by a greedy HOA, it was just a dry pipe, and with a drought starting, the system was already straining. I called the new water commissioner, Peterson, barely old enough to shave, and told him the emergency system was now offline, thanks to Meline's project. He had no clue what I was talking about. Said there was no reservoir at my address, just a private parcel. Sounds like a civil dispute, he told me, then hung up. The institution had forgotten its own lifeline. So fine. If nobody was going to listen, I'd make sure they felt the consequences. That night, I called Mac, retired fire captain, old friend. Need a hand with some plumbing? I said. Mac showed up after dark, 2 thermoses of coffee and a canvas bag of tools. We worked through the night, following my old schematics, isolating the secondary loop that supplied 3 old developments. Didn't break anything, just tightened the system, took the pressure assist offline. By sunrise, you wouldn't know we'd been there, but the county sure would. 36 hours later, the call started. Water pressure dropped, faucets sputtered, showers trickled, and soon the county had to issue a boil water advisory. Now, suddenly, it wasn't just my fight. The whole community was feeling the pain. The local news switched from neighborly dispute to regional water crisis. My phone rang. It was Peterson. His tone had changed. We have a massive pressure drop and can't find the leak. Your backup system. I let him sweat, then emailed him a map showing exactly where the system ran, right through the spot where Meline's nephew had trespassed. You let them touch it, I said. Now you deal with the consequences. All hell broke loose at the next HOA board meeting. Meline blamed the county blamed infrastructure. The crowd wanted answers, and this time, they wanted to hear from me. The room erupted with, "Let Tom speak." When I finally got to the podium, I explained it all. How the draining wasn't just vandalism, but criminal fraud. How their water crisis was no accident. How a fake assessment and a $120,000 contract signed by Meline's own hand had created this mess. And then I dropped the final card. The 20-year lease the county had for my emergency water system was about to expire. If Meline and the board didn't resign and make full restitution, the county would lose access to their own backup for good. The crowd exploded. Board members resigned on the spot. Meline tried to escape, but sheriff's deputies were waiting, charged her with fraud and environmental tampering. The county and the new community board dissolved the old HOA, launched a full investigation, and took over the contract with my conditions, restore the lake to Eleanor's specs, and build a new, open, transparent system for the neighborhood. They did it, too. The county paid for proper restoration, engineers brought in clean soil and new trout, and the lake filled back up. Sarah became chair of the new board. No more secret meetings, no more bullies with clipboards. And for the first time in a long time, the community came together, stronger than ever, looking out for each other instead of hiding behind threats and fines. Meline vanished, a cautionary tale for future wannabe dictators. Derek's contractor license? Gone. The county put up a simple plaque by the well cover in my backyard, in honor of Thomas Blake, who gave quietly and fought when it mattered. That was enough for me. When all was said and done, I sat down on Eleanor's old bench, the lake full again, ducks returned, and that heron standing in the shallows like nothing had ever happened. Peace at last. But now everyone knows just how loud water can roar when you wake it. So let me ask, where do you stand when your community gets squeezed by power-hungry folks with more ambition than sense? Would you fight back, or just let it slide? Drop your thoughts below, because these days, you never know when you'll have to turn the valve yourself.